As you know, and so the public knows, National Police Week is this month, May 11th through the 17th. So in recognition of Police Week, I'd like to recognize some of our officers that have gone above and beyond in the performance of their duties. Our first award is going to be a unit citation, which is awarded to a unit within the department that best exemplifies devotion to duty and brings acclaim to the unit and the department. At this time, I'd like to call up Detective Sergeant Marsh, Sergeant Samora, Detective York, Detective Corletta, and Police Officer Wynn. On the evening of August 4th, 2021, a resident of Riverside Drive contacted the Suffern Police Department and advised us that her house had been burglarized. Sergeant Samora, Detective York, Detective Corletta, and Police Officer Wynn responded to the scene. The responding officers began an extensive video canvass that went late into the night, eventually developing a suspect vehicle. Further coordination with the Mahwah Police Department's Detective Bureau, Detective York was able to obtain a license plate for the suspect vehicle. Further investigation and interviews by Police Officer Corletta at a local consignment shop revealed the name of the suspect. The following tour of duty, Sergeant Samora and Police Officer Wynn were on patrol and observed the suspect vehicle operating on Lafayette Avenue. The vehicle was then located unoccupied on Bridge Street. A perimeter was established around Bridge Street with Detective Sergeant Marsh and Detective York maintaining surveillance on the vehicle. A short time later, the vehicle left the Bridge Street residence where a traffic stop was conducted on the suspect and her vehicle. A search of her vehicle yielded the proceeds of the burglary. Additionally, proceeds from a second burglary that occurred 1 week earlier were located in this vehicle. The keen observations and relentless investigative efforts by the above officers reflect great credit upon themselves and the Suffern Police Department. Therefore, I hereby recognize the collective efforts of Detective Sergeant Richard March, Sergeant William Samora, Detective Andrew York, and Detective Michael Corletta, and Police Officer Daniel Wynn by awarding them with a certificate of recognition in the grade of unit citation for their actions and efforts during this investigation.
Thank you, folks. All right, thank you, guys. Andy, 1 second. Just want to say congratulations from all the board, but if I may mention something else, Mr. York? Andrew, how you doing? 1 second. Just to let everyone know here, we had a gentleman pass away this week. It was actually Detective York's father. He was from the area. He actually lived in Sloatsburg, all right? He was a very liked man and greatly respected. And I had the pleasure of knowing him. And I just want to send my condolences from this whole village to you and your family, all right? And until we meet him in heaven, God bless, thank you, all right? That's it.
Thank you, Mayor. Our second award tonight is also going to be a unit citation. At this time, I would like to call up Sergeant Yustine, Sergeant Kiernan, Sergeant Figueroa, Detective York, Officer Michael Careswell, Officer Adams, Officer Corletta, Officer Barry, Officer Wynn, Officer DeLuca, Dispatcher Conklin, and Dispatcher Wolf. It's like half the department.
Yeah.
Easily.
They're that good. Kathy's gonna need to stand over in court.
Officer Whitty? Did I skip you? On December 4th, 2021, the department received a report of a pedestrian struck by a motor vehicle on Orange Avenue. This incident occurred immediately following the Christmas parade in the downtown area. Officers quickly responded to the scene and began administering aid to the injured parties. During the preliminary investigation, it was discovered that the driver operating the vehicle that struck the pedestrians had fled the scene. During the on-scene accident investigation, officers were able to locate a mirror from the suspect's vehicle under a separate parked vehicle. This mirror was a piece of evidence that was crucial in providing a lead for the suspect vehicle. Officers on scene were able to canvass several businesses for video surveillance of the incident. A full and detailed accident reconstruction was conducted by Officer Whitty, and over the course of the next several days, a variety of different officers canvassed additional streets, houses, and businesses for any information regarding this vehicle. Eventually, a suspect vehicle was located, the driver was identified, gave a full confession, and an arrest was made. This case was resolved by members of the department working diligently and collectively to reach a successful conclusion. So at this time, I hereby recognize the collective efforts of Sergeant Yustine, Sergeant Kiernan, Sergeant Figueroa, Detective York, Police Officer Mike Careswell, Officer Adams, Officer Corletta, Officer Barry, Officer Wynn, Officer DeLuca, Dispatcher Conklin, and Dispatcher Wolf by awarding them with a certificate of recognition and the grade of unit citation for their actions and efforts during this investigation.
Oops.
He got 2 plaques now.
And one with the glass intact.
Photo here, if you don't mind.
Did I? Sorry.
Thank you, Eric. Get in front there, you're gonna get lost there. Right?
You got one angle lens here.
Kneel, don't kneel down, stand up. I'm trying my best.
Everyone's here. The cops are on the side.
Thank you, Rose. Congratulations.
excited. All the police officers are down there. Well, it was kind of crowded up there.
Our next award tonight is going to be for excellent police service. This award is awarded to any member of the department who, in the line of duty, performs an act that brings acclaim to themselves or the department. At this time, I'd like to call up Detective Sergeant Marsh, Detective York, and P.O. Veras. On the morning of July 3rd, 2021, a victim walked into the Suffern Police Department headquarters and reported that he was asleep under the New York State Thruway overpass when he was violently attacked by a perpetrator with a knife. The victim suffered a severe stab wound. While speaking with the victim, Police Officer Veras ascertained that after being stabbed, the perpetrator forcibly removed the victim's shoes from his feet. Police Officer Veras began rendering medical attention to the victim and requested the Detective Bureau to respond to the station. The victim was immediately transported to Nyack Hospital by Ramapo Valley Ambulance Corps for treatment of the stab wound. Upon removal of the victim to the hospital, Detective Sergeant Marsh, Detective York, and Police Officer Veras responded to the New York State Thruway overpass on Orange Avenue. The responding officers, not knowing if the suspect was still armed with the knife, confronted the perpetrator and took him into custody without incident. The swift actions of Detective Sergeant Marsh, Detective York, and Police Officer Veras reflect a great credit upon themselves and the Suffern Police Department. Therefore, at this time, I hereby recognize the collective efforts of Detective Sergeant Richard Marsh, Detective Andrew York, and Police Officer Julio Veras by awarding them with a certificate of recognition in the grade of excellent police service for their actions that morning.
That's good exercise. No laughing, guys.
The most exercise I've ever gotten out of working.
Well, this ain't overtime, right? Come
Except for only when yes, sir.
Unless you phone.
Put your hands up, Kathy.
Just right
Thank you, folks. Thank you.
Our next award is going to be a unit citation. Detective Sergeant Marsh and Detective York, don't go too far.
You're gonna have to redecorate the house.
Might as well stay up here. In February of 2021, the department received a complaint of a sexual assault of a minor. Detective Sergeant Marsh and Detective York began to work on interviewing the victim and their family members to try and develop a suspect. A suspect was developed and identified, and by using multiple investigative methods, which included video surveillance, license plate reader inquiries, physical surveillance, and multi-agency cooperation. After further investigation, the detectives were able to locate the suspect in New Jersey, where they obtained a full confession from him. The suspect was arrested and extradited to New York State. In September of 2021, the suspect pled guilty to a felony offense. Therefore, I hereby recognize the collective efforts of Detective Sergeant Marsh and Detective York by awarding them with a certificate of recognition in the grade of unit citation for their actions and efforts during this investigation.
Let's go, gang.
Come on up, guys. One more.
Because Melissa keeps making fun of us.
I'm not saying
I'm gonna go between.
Whatever you want.
Opposite side, I'm gonna turn the sheet.
But I
Our last award of the night is an Honorable Service Award. Detective Sergeant Marsh, if you could just go up here.
You're killing Mike, so check this out.
This award is awarded for a credible act in the line of duty showing initiative and accomplishment.
Maybe not.
Acting on newly developed information, Detective Sergeant Marsh reopened a cold case and investigated the disappearance of a female party that was reported missing to this agency in April of 1992. Through Detective Sergeant Marsh's coordination with the New York City Medical Examiner's Office, the body of an unidentified woman was exhumed and a DNA profile was collected and examined. The DNA proved to be a match for the reported missing person. Through Detective Sergeant Marsh's efforts, he was able to provide closure to a family that had been missing their loved one for nearly 30 years. Therefore, I hereby recognize Detective Sergeant Marsh for his hard work and dedication in bringing this 30-year-old case to its conclusion by awarding him this certificate of recognition in the grade of honorable service.
You're gonna need to redecorate the whole house. You need a whole new extension. Hi, Shannon.
Good? All right, thank you. Congratulations.
That's all I have for our presentation tonight. I would just like to thank the board for their continuing support of the police department and the men and women that work for us. Thank you.
Thank you for everything everybody does. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
I just want to thank the police department in insisting we had a fire recently on Riverside Drive, and the fire department did a fabulous job, and the police came and did their job with traffic and investigating the fire, and it was an accidental fire. No one was hurt. Red Cross came, we took care of all the people there, as what we do as a community together, and I want to make sure that, Chief thanks everyone for doing their job on that, and also the fire department, the young firefighters, and the older ones who watch the young firefighters go in the building, okay? And thank you very much, all right?